I know some of you are probably sitting on fan theories that the death certificate isn't real and that Frankie is still out there somewhere hiding and he's going to be revealed at the end of the season, but I feel like this is pretty definitive that Frankie is dead. I had thought that it was pretty definitive in previous episodes, but some of you were still holding on to hope, and I expect some of you will still be holding on to hope even after this episode. Drew here, and episode 7 of City on a Hill Season 2, Apophasis. It's interesting because the title comes from this exchange between Jackie Rohr and Grace Campbell, where he talks about, essentially the meaning of the phrase apophasis, which is that it's something that I say I don't have to bring up, but then by saying I don't have to bring it up, it's essentially bringing it up. And you could argue that the climactic scene of this episode, the moment when Anton Campbell finds himself cornered and we don't see how he meets his end fate, but it seems, without seeing it, that we kind of know what happened, that he was shot probably in the back of the head by this Boston police officer who came in against orders and claims that Anton wheeled on him to shoot him. But nonetheless, we didn't see the moment, and it seemed that the officer who was with this officer who shot Anton seemed to have a reaction when the officer said that. So it seems pretty clear that something else happened, and more than likely, Anton had his back turned and was not threatening the officer at the time that he was shot. And regardless of all the things that Anton has done, he is a human being and his life has value. And it's hard because in this moment, the whole scene is just so awash with ambiguity because we didn't see the moment when Anton was shot. We didn't see what the officer was doing or thinking. We don't know whether Anton was about to come running down the steps, firing at the officers, potentially killing some of them, or whether he was about to turn himself in to preserve his mother's safety. We don't know. But what we do know is that in the context of an episode where Siobhan and Decourcy experienced this horrible, horrible tragedy of this miscarriage that was likely brought on by the shooting by Anton, that Decourcy, despite the anger that he feels towards the Campbell family and the tragedy that they have caused in his own life, is being the bigger man and is going to try and hold the Boston police officer who shot Anton accountable. And this is an interesting moment. I had kind of predicted that Siobhan might continue to defend Anton after he, shot her in the car, and that was going to show how justice is justice regardless of what happens to you personally. But it's interesting because we're seeing this arc, but we're seeing it with Decourcy, who throughout this episode, Aldis Hodge's performance was just fantastic, whether it be the moment where he was curled up on the bed in the fetal position next to Siobhan, and you could just see how broken he was by the loss of their baby, or that moment, which it was the type of moment I typically don't like because it's an actor's showcase typically, and it always feels a little bit affected to me, when he takes the crib out to the curb after Siobhan tells him to get rid of anything that might remind them of what they lost. And there's this beat where he looks at the crib, and I knew what was going to happen. I knew that, obviously he was going to turn around and smash the crap out of the thing. But the way that Aldis Hodge acted this scene, it was utterly convincing, and you just could feel the pain of this character in this moment. And I just feel that Hodge, as an actor, held nothing back, and it was utterly convincing. And the way that he moaned as he walked back slowly to his apartment, I felt for him so, so deeply in the midst of this tragedy. But that he's still going to try and hold the person who killed this person who has caused him so much pain accountable. I think it's really, really commendable, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the last episode. Regardless of that, in the rest of the episode, I thought that Jackie, had a lot of really good dialogue, a lot of really good scenes, whether it be his reaction to the fact that his wife has given money to Maeve, who seemingly may not be all that she claims to be, that maybe she's actually working for the IRA and is actually going to use these weapons to enact some kind of violence, or whether it be his scenes with Guy Dan, where Guy Dan tells him to basically be politically correct and not to, say anything offensive, and then he responds and he's like, "What did I just say?" In the moment where he enters and has that confrontation with Grace Campbell, I felt that Pernell Walker this episode really, really sold a lot of the dramatic moments in a powerful way, and it was amazing the way that going into this scene with Jackie, they've really set up her dilemma super well, that Kelvin will die, most likely, if he doesn't get hospital attention, but she knows that the only way to guarantee that he gets hospital attention, that he's safe, is to basically trade the life of Anton for the life of Kelvin. And putting her in this position, knowing the things that her son has done, and still, realizing that she loves her children and she wants to protect both of them, putting her in this Sophie's choice of a situation, I thought was masterful writing. It wasn't done in such a way that it felt contrived. It wasn't done in such a way that you felt that the writers had just pushed her into this corner that would never happen in real life. It felt like a plausible situation, and it felt like a moment where this character was really having to grapple with a hard decision, and you can understand why she made this decision. I think it would have been really hard for her to buy. It would have been really hard to buy Grace turning on Anton under different circumstances. I think it had to be this kind of a challenging circumstances, because we've seen her hold on to her children no matter what and refuse to turn on them. And that moment where Jackie kind of rams home that Anton's actions have led to the death of Decourcy and Siobhan's baby and says, "Is this the person that you really want to protect?" You understand in that moment how hard a decision this still is for her. But you still, I think, can understand why she ultimately decides to do what she decides to do. And it was smart of them to have her figure out a way to get out of the hole she's in with the housing project and to get, that moving forward. So it wasn't just about Kelvin. She managed to protect the community as well. So on the whole, she really, really negotiated well there. But nothing in this episode was as heart-wrenching, I feel, as that moment where she's walking with Anton and she knows that she's taking him to be arrested and possibly to his death, given that, there's a more than likely chance that what did happen will happen, and she knows this. And he's talking about this moment when he was a child, and how she talked about how family always protects each other. You fight people on the outside, you don't fight your family. And to me, this was just a touching moment, a quiet moment right before the storm, and the tension's growing because you know what's coming. And seeing the torment on her face as she knows she's betraying she's betraying her son to the police, and she's no longer protecting him, that she's turning her back on him. And seeing this torment and him reminding her of a time when he was a child, of a time when he hadn't done all the things he's gone on to do, when he was just her son, and reminding her of how much she loves him. I just found this scene heartbreaking to watch. And again, like I said, no matter what Anton has done, and he's done some very bad things, he's killed a lot of people, and ultimately, whether or not it was Kelvin's bullet or his bullet, it seems pretty clear that it was his responsibility ultimately that Renia died, and all the other people he's killed as well. It was always going to end badly for him, but he was still a human being, and we have a justice system that works the way it does for a reason. So I think that it's going to be interesting to explore, what the justice system thinks the life of someone like Anton is worth, what they think the life of someone like Kelvin is worth, and what Decourcy discovers as he tries to hold the Boston Police Department accountable for this situation. But all in all, I thought that this was a very, very compelling episode of Sitting on a Hill. The only plot line that I didn't think had much momentum is Maeve and Mrs. Roar. But we'll get into that next week because I feel like it'll be more interesting to talk about that once we actually have a payoff. But let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of other shows, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching.